When I was a young man, I used to think that having a good job was the ultimate goal. I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed loyal to the company, and kept climbing the ladder, one day I'd find freedom. But here's what I discovered. A job can make you a living, but ownership makes you free. See, when you trade your time for money, you're always limited by the hours in your day. You can't work 24 hours, and you can't live two lives. So if all you have is employment, you'll always be working for someone else's dream. The real shift happens when you start building ownership, something that works even when you don't. I remember the first time I realized this. I was working as a distributor, earning commissions, and I thought I was doing well. But then I looked at the man who owned the company, the one who designed the system. While I was working to make sales, he was earning from every product moved by hundreds of people like me. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just earning a living, he was earning freedom. The difference wasn't luck, it was ownership. He had created something that produced value without needing his daily effort. That was the lesson I took to heart. Ownership doesn't always mean running a big corporation. It could start small. Maybe it's creating an idea, writing a book, developing a product, or investing in a small piece of real estate. It's anything that continues to work for you long after you've stopped working for it. Every dollar you save and invest becomes an employee that works day and night. Every system you build, every skill you master that can be multiplied or shared, that's ownership. Now, I'm not saying you should quit your job tomorrow. Your job is your foundation. It provides stability while you build your dream. But never let it become your ceiling. Use your job as a tool, a place to learn, to gather experience, to earn capital. Then channel that into something that belongs to you. Because when you build ownership, you start designing your own future instead of renting someone else's. And that's where freedom begins. When I was a young man, I used to think money was just about earning more. I figured if I worked harder, stayed longer, or made one more sale, I'd eventually become wealthy. But I was wrong. It's not just how much money you make, it's how well you understand the language of money that determines how far it goes. See, money has a language. It speaks through taxes, investments, assets, compounding, and cash flow. The rich study that language. The poor stay confused by it. And confusion costs more than ignorance, because when you don't know how money works, money will quietly work against you. I'll never forget when I first learned how taxes really operate. I was sitting in a seminar, and the speaker explained that the government rewards certain behaviors, like building businesses, investing in property, or creating jobs through tax incentives. It was a light bulb moment for me. Up until then, I thought taxes were just something everyone had to pay equally. But I discovered that those who understand the rules play the game differently. The wealthy aren't avoiding taxes. They're simply educated on how to structure their money to work within the system. That's when I realized wealth isn't about being lucky. It's about being literate in how money moves. Compounding was another revelation. The first time someone explained compound interest to me, I didn't believe the numbers. But once I saw how a small, consistent investment could multiply over time, I understood why some people retire with abundance while others struggle. The difference wasn't the paycheck, it was the knowledge. Learning the language of money means taking responsibility for your financial education. Read books, study investment principles, learn how to read a financial statement, understand the difference between an asset and a liability. Don't just let your accountant handle it, understand it yourself. Because when you're financially literate, you make choices that protect and grow your wealth instead of draining it. You can't win a game you don't understand. If you learn the rules of money, the way it grows, the way it's taxed, the way it flows, you'll start to see opportunities everywhere. The rich aren't playing a different game. They're just playing by the right rules. Learn them, and you'll never be confused by money again. You'll make it your most powerful ally. When I was starting out, I used to think success meant showing it. Nice suits, fancy cars, expensive dinners. I wanted people to see that I was doing well, even when I really wasn't. But here's what I learned the hard way. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep and how wisely you use it. Living below your means isn't about deprivation, it's about discipline. It's about giving up temporary comfort for long-term freedom. See, most people do it backward. They live beyond their means to look successful today and end up sacrificing their future tomorrow. But those who win the game of wealth make the opposite choice. They live below their means now so they can live far beyond them later. I remember when I made my first bit of real money. The temptation to upgrade everything was strong. But I realized if I spent like the rich, before I thought like the rich, I'd never get there. So I made a deal with myself. I'd invest first, spend second. I decided to let my investments pay for my lifestyle, not my emotions. I drove the same old car, wore the same old suit, but I was quietly building something powerful behind the scenes. Assets, savings, ownership. That restraint, that simple decision to wait, became one of the best investments I ever made. Living below your means doesn't mean shrinking your dreams. It means expanding your patience. It means understanding that every dollar you don't spend is a seed you plant. And those seeds, when invested wisely, will one day grow into trees that bear fruit year after year. The wealthy understand this principle deeply. They're not stingy, they're strategic. They know that freedom is bought not with dollars, but with discipline. If you can resist the urge to impress today, you'll have the power to impact tomorrow. The sacrifice might sting for a season, but it buys you peace, options, and time. So don't measure your success by what you spend. Measure it by how much control you have over your choices. Because that's the real wealth choice. Live modestly today so you can live magnificently tomorrow. Temporary sacrifice, if done wisely, becomes the down payment on permanent freedom. When times are tough and money feels tight, it's easy to slip into what I call scarcity thinking. I've been there myself. There was a time when I was broke, deep in debt, and wondering if I'd ever catch a break. My wallet was empty, and worse, so was my mindset. I kept focusing on what I didn't have: money, connections, opportunities. But then I learned one of life's great truths. Scarcity is a mindset, not a condition. You can be broke and still think rich, or you can have money and still think poor. The difference lies in whether you panic or plan. Don't panic over what you don't have. Plan with what you do have. That shift changed my entire life. I remember sitting down one night, frustrated and tired, when I realized that the little I had was enough to start. I had time, energy, a few ideas, and a willingness to learn. That was my capital. So instead of saying, I can't because I don't have enough, I started asking, what can I do with what I have right now? That question opened doors I never saw before. Scarcity thinking closes your eyes. Strategy thinking opens them. Scarcity says there's not enough. Strategy says, how can I make the most of what's here? The truth is, abundance doesn't begin with wealth. It begins with wisdom. When you take inventory of your skills, your network, your time, and your creativity, you'll realize you already possess tools to begin. The rich don't wait for perfect conditions. They create opportunity out of imperfection. They see limitations as invitations to innovate. If you're short on money, use your mind. If you're short on resources, use your relationships. If you're short on experience, use your hunger. There's always something you can leverage. You don't build success by complaining about lack. You build it by managing what's already in your hands. The person who learns to turn scarcity into strategy will never stay poor for long, because that mindset transforms every limitation into a lesson and every obstacle into opportunity. So start where you are, with what you have, and do what you can. You'll be amazed how far that simple approach can take you. Remember, you don't need everything to begin. You just need to begin with everything you've got. When I was a young man, I thought the secret to success was working harder. And I did. I worked long hours, took every opportunity that came my way, and pushed myself to exhaustion. But even then, I saw others who seemed to move ahead faster, doing less physical work than I was. It puzzled me until one day my mentor said something that changed my life. He said, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job." That hit me like lightning. I realized that your income seldom exceeds your level of personal development. You don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to that hour. And the only way to increase that value is to learn more, to grow more, to think bigger. That's why I say, outlearn before you out-earn. The wealthy understand this principle deeply. They study money, philosophy, markets, people. They read biographies, attend seminars, keep journals, ask questions. Their curiosity is endless. Meanwhile, too many people spend their evenings watching someone else live their dreams on a screen. One group invests in expanding the mind, the other rents out their attention. I remember when I was broke and could barely afford books, but I made a deal with myself. Every time I earned $1, a part of it would go toward education. I bought books on sales, communication, and human behavior. I went to seminars, even when it meant skipping a few meals. I wrote down insights daily until my notebooks became treasured chests of lessons. And over time, what I learned started earning for me. My thoughts improved, my words sharpened, and my value in the marketplace multiplied. Knowledge compounds faster than money ever will. The more you learn, the better decisions you make. The better decisions you make, the better results you get. That's the chain of progress. Most people want higher income, but don't invest in higher understanding. But wealth isn't accidental. It's intentional, built on wisdom applied. When you commit to learning every day, life starts to hand you better options. So read something that stretches your thinking. Listen to someone wiser than you. Capture your thoughts before they escape. Your mind is your greatest asset. Feed it daily. Because when you outlearn the crowd, you won't have to compete with them. You'll lead them. When I was younger, I used to think that success meant having more things, more comfort, more pleasure. I worked hard so I could buy what I wanted, when I wanted, but the truth hit me one day. I was only feeding other people's dreams, not building my own. I was a consumer, first in line when something new came out, but last in line when it came to creating something of value. My mentor once said, the moment you start producing more than you consume, the game changes. That was one of the greatest lessons of my life. Most people live their entire lives in the consumer mindset. They spend every dollar they make, often more than they have. They chase the next purchase, the next upgrade, thinking it'll bring happiness. But here's the truth. Consuming feels good in the moment. Producing feels good forever. Every great fortune, every lasting legacy, every powerful business came from someone who decided to create instead of just consume. The producer builds systems, products, ideas, or services that serve others, and as a result, wealth flows back to them. Consumers, on the other hand, keep those systems alive by paying into them, never realizing they're funding someone else's dream. When I was broke, I started asking myself, How can I create something that outlives the hour I'm paid for? At first, it was small. I wrote a booklet, recorded a talk, helped someone with an idea. Soon, those small efforts began producing returns even while I slept. That's when I understood real wealth. Not money sitting in the bank, but value working in the marketplace. The producer thinks differently. Instead of asking, "What can I buy with my money?" they ask, "What can I build with my skills?" If you want to be wealthy, shift your role in the economic story. Every time you spend, you're either empowering a producer or you are one. So the question is, on which side will you stand? Learn to create ideas, content, solutions, opportunities. Produce something useful, something meaningful. Don't just be the customer, be the creator. Because the moment you produce more than you consume, you step out of survival and into freedom. That's the day money stops controlling you and starts serving you. When I got my very first paycheck, I remember feeling a rush of pride. It was proof that my hard work had value. But you know what I did with it? I spent it, every last cent. By the end of the week, I was right back where I started, waiting for the next one. It took me years to realize that paychecks aren't rewards, they're seeds. And like any seed, they can either be eaten or planted. Eat them all, and you'll stay hungry. Plant a portion, and one day you'll have a harvest so big you won't remember what it felt like to struggle. My mentor once told me, "Don't see your paycheck as income, see it as opportunity." He explained that every dollar has a job. Some are meant to pay the bills, but some must go to work for you. I didn't understand at first. I thought money only worked when I did. But when I started planting, putting a small percentage into savings, investments, ideas, and education, that money began to grow roots. Slowly at first, but steadily. And one day I looked around and realized my money had started producing money. That's when financial independence begins. Not when you earn more, but when what you earn starts earning for you. Most people treat their income like fruit instead of seed. They consume it all today, forgetting that tomorrow always comes. But the wealthy think in seasons. They plant in spring, tend in summer, harvest in fall, and rest in winter. They understand patience. They understand growth. They understand that even a small amount, invested consistently, compounds into something extraordinary. The key isn't how much you plant. It's that you plant. A single dollar saved is more powerful than 10 spent. I've always said, part of all you earn is yours to keep. But not just to keep, make it work. Buy books that multiply your wisdom. Invest in funds that grow your capital. Support ventures that build your future. The goal isn't to get rich quick. It's to get rich sure. Each time you get paid, ask yourself, how much of this will I plant? Because every planted dollar is a promise to your future self. So treat each paycheck as a field full of potential. Consume wisely, plant diligently, and nurture patiently. Because one day, those small seeds will grow into a forest of freedom where your money works harder than you ever had to. When I first started on my journey toward financial freedom, I didn't realize how forgetful the mind can be. We live, we earn, we spend, we learn, and then we forget. The lessons that could have changed our future slip away because we never took the time to record them. That's why one of the greatest habits I ever developed was keeping a financial journal. Not a fancy one. Just a simple notebook where I wrote down what I earned, what I spent, what I saved, and, most importantly, what I learned. Over the years, that little journal became more valuable than any paycheck I ever received. It was the record of my progress, my mistakes, and my growing understanding of money. You see, The act of writing does something powerful. It slows you down just enough to notice patterns, to see clearly where you're growing and where you're repeating old habits. When I was young, I'd find myself facing the same money problems month after month, and I couldn't understand why. But once I started writing things down, the answer was right there in front of me. I wasn't managing my emotions. I was spending from frustration or impulse. My journal became a mirror, showing me the truth that memory alone had hidden. Over time, I began to record more than numbers. I wrote about how I felt when I made a smart investment, how I reacted when I lost money, what I learned from observing successful people, and how each financial decision shaped my mindset. Every entry became a small deposit of wisdom. When things went well, the journal reminded me why. When things went wrong, it reminded me how to do better. That's how you turn experience into education, by recording it. I've met people who've earned fortunes and lost them simply because they never reflected on their journey. They let time pass without documentation, and so they repeated their mistakes. Don't let that happen to you. Treat your financial journal like a mentor, one that never forgets a lesson. Review it monthly. Celebrate the wins, analyze the losses, and note the insights. You'll start to see growth not just in your wallet, but in your wisdom. So, don't just earn money, learn from it. Write it down, study it, and improve upon it. Because the wealth you record becomes the wealth you remember, and the lessons you remember become the foundation for everything greater yet to come. When it comes to building wealth, most people set goals, but very few set standards. And that's where the difference between wishing for success and living it truly lies. You see, a goal says, I hope to save more this year, but a standard says, I save 15% no matter what. A goal depends on motivation. A standard depends on identity. One fades when life gets tough, while the other stands firm because it's who you are, not just what you want. Wealth isn't built by good intentions. It's built by non-negotiable rules you live by, even when it's inconvenient. I remember a time when money was tight, and I thought, maybe I'll skip saving this month and catch up next time. But then I realized, if I bend my own rules once, I'll bend them again. So I didn't skip it. I put that 10% aside, even though it meant tightening my belt. That simple act taught me something profound. Discipline today buys you freedom tomorrow. When you have standards, you stop leaving your future to chance. You start shaping it, one consistent decision at a time. Think of standards as the guardrails that keep you from veering off the road of your own progress. If you set a standard to never go into debt for pleasure, you won't have to rethink it every time a shiny new gadget tempts you. The decision is already made. If your rule is to invest a portion of every paycheck, you won't debate it when bills pile up. You'll adjust your spending, not your standard. That's the kind of thinking that separates the wealthy from the wishful. I often tell people, wealth doesn't start with money, it starts with discipline. Your financial standards are the invisible structure that supports your prosperity. They don't rely on luck or circumstance. They rely on your commitment to yourself. And the beauty of standards is that they raise your sense of self-worth. You begin to see yourself as the kind of person who honors their own word, who doesn't break promises to their future. So set your standards high, and don't lower them to match your current situation. Instead, raise your habits to meet your standards. When you do that, goals become milestones, not maybes. Wealth isn't something you chase. It's something you become through the consistency of your standards, day after day, without fail. One of the most powerful lessons I ever learned about money and life was the difference between needs and wants. It sounds simple, but I assure you, it's one of the great dividing lines between those who stay broke and those who build wealth. Most people confuse the two. They treat wants like needs, and as a result, their money disappears long before the month ends. The wealthy, on the other hand, have trained themselves to know the difference. They secure their needs, fund their investments, and only then consider their wants. That's not stinginess, it's strategy. I remember when I was young and earning very little, I wanted a nicer car. I thought, I work hard, I deserve it. But then my mentor said something that stuck with me. He said, deserve it twice, first in discipline, then in dollars. What he meant was simple. If your desire for comfort comes before your commitment to growth, you'll never be truly free. So instead of buying that car, I invested. I put my money to work in something that could grow. Years later, that investment bought me a better car, paid in full, and with peace of mind. That's the reward of understanding priorities. Needs are what sustain your foundation. Food, shelter, savings, education, health, they keep your life stable and your future secure. Wants are everything else that adds pleasure, but not necessarily progress. When you mix the two, you end up financing temporary satisfaction at the expense of long-term stability. And sadly, that's what many people do. They buy things to look successful instead of doing the work to become successful. I've always believed that wealth is not measured by what you can afford, but by what you can postpone. The ability to delay gratification, to say not yet to something you want, is the mark of maturity, both financially and personally. The wealthy understand that every dollar spent on a want today could have been a seed for a greater return tomorrow. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about timing your pleasures wisely so they don't rob you of future freedom. So here's the rule. Take care of your needs first, invest second, and reward yourself last. Let your wants be the fruit of your discipline, not the cause of your debt. When you learn to master that order, you'll find that wealth doesn't just grow in your bank account, it grows in your character. When I look back at my early years, I remember how many people around me lived for one day, the blessed Friday. You could see it on their faces Monday morning, tired, restless, waiting for the weekend as if it were salvation. But here's what I learned. If you're always working for Friday, you're building a life that needs constant escape. You're trading 5 days of struggle for 2 days of relief. That's not freedom, that's survival. And survival should never be the goal. The goal is freedom. The kind of life where your time is your own, where you work because you want to, not because you have to. In my early 20s, I was working hard, sometimes 2 jobs, just to make ends meet. I thought if I worked longer hours, I'd eventually get ahead. But then someone told me something that changed my entire outlook. He said, don't just work harder on your job, work harder on yourself. That was the turning point. I realized that true freedom doesn't come from clocking more hours. It comes from increasing your value, from creating something that continues to produce even when you don't. See, there's a difference between a worker and a builder. A worker trades time for money. A builder uses time to create systems, skills, and assets that outlive effort. The wealthy don't celebrate Fridays, they celebrate progress. They understand that every day is an opportunity to design a life where money works for them, not the other way around. I started asking myself better questions. How can I earn without constant labor? What can I create, own, or learn that produces income while I sleep? Those questions led me to entrepreneurship, investing, and self-education. Slowly, the need for Friday faded because I began building a life I didn't need to escape from. And that's the ultimate reward. Not retirement at 65, but independence long before it. So, here's the lesson. Don't work to survive the week. Work to design the life. Use your job as a tool, not a trap. Save, invest, and learn until your time becomes yours again. Because freedom isn't about having a weekend off. It's about having control over your time, your choices, and your future. Work for that kind of freedom, and every day will start to feel like Friday. As you start building wealth, it's easy to let success change the way you see the world. I've seen it time and again, people who rise quickly, and suddenly the world revolves around them. Money has a strange way of inflating the ego if you're not careful. But here's the truth I've learned over a lifetime. Wealth is a tool, not a crown. It doesn't make you smarter, better, or more deserving. It simply gives you more responsibility. And with that responsibility comes the need for humility. When I first began to earn more than I needed just to survive, I noticed a subtle shift in myself. I started thinking I had all the answers, that my path was the only path, that my efforts alone created my success. That thinking almost blinded me. But life has a way of teaching humility if you pay attention. I remember a mentor pulling me aside one day and saying, "Don't confuse money with wisdom. Money can open doors, but it won't teach you how to walk through them correctly." That statement stuck with me. Humility and growth isn't about diminishing your achievements. It's about keeping gratitude at the center of every gain. Every dollar earned, every opportunity seized, every lesson learned, it's a gift, not an entitlement. I make it a practice to remind myself daily where I came from, the struggles I faced, and the people who helped me along the way. That keeps perspective alive. It prevents wealth from turning into arrogance. Gratitude is the anchor, and perspective is the compass. When you maintain both, your decisions stay grounded, your relationships stay real, and your wealth continues to serve its true purpose: freedom, security, and the ability to create value for others. I've watched many people gain financial abundance only to lose clarity, kindness, and respect along the way. Don't let that be you. True wealth is measured not just in dollars, but in character and wisdom. So, as you grow, always ask yourself, am I grateful for what I have? Am I seeing the bigger picture beyond myself? Keep learning, keep giving, keep appreciating, and let humility guide every step of your journey. Wealth without humility is fragile. Wealth with humility is lasting. One of the most profound lessons I've learned about wealth is that it isn't truly wealth unless it can outlive you. Money in a bank account, no matter how large, is temporary. But habits, systems, and principles, those endure. The richest people I know aren't just the ones with high incomes. They're the ones who have created structures that allow their wealth to continue working long after they stop actively managing it. And you can do the same, starting today. It begins with teaching. Your children, your family, even your colleagues, they can inherit far more than money. They can inherit your principles, your discipline, and your understanding of how money works. I remember when I first sat down with my own children and began sharing the simple rules I followed. Save first, invest wisely, delay gratification. It wasn't about lectures or guilt. It was about planting seeds of understanding that would grow over a lifetime. And over time, I watched them make decisions confidently, not because I told them what to do, but because I showed them how to think. Systems are the next step. Wealth doesn't grow merely because you have it. It grows when it is set to work. One of the most powerful tools I've used is automation. Whether it's investing a portion of each paycheck into stocks, mutual funds, or retirement accounts, setting these systems up ensures that your money keeps growing without constant oversight. It's like planting a garden that tends itself. You don't have to water each plant by hand every day, but the seeds grow steadily. Habits reinforce these systems. Every dollar you allocate intentionally, every investment you automate, Every conversation you have about money with those you care about, it all compounds. I've kept journals, tracked my investments, and reviewed my financial systems regularly, not to obsess, but to ensure they are serving their purpose and multiplying. And the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't stop with you. When habits and systems are in place, the next generation can step into a framework already set up for success. So, think beyond your lifespan. Ask yourself, what structures can I create today that will keep my wealth alive tomorrow? What principles can I teach that will guide others long after I'm gone? True financial legacy isn't measured by the size of an estate. It's measured by the enduring habits, wisdom, and systems you leave behind. Design them well, and your wealth will echo through generations.